We are going to monitor a number of rare species, and these are critically endangered species, highly threatened by Phytophthora dieback, and we are just going to assess the health of the populations, whether numbers are declining, whether they're relatively stable, and how healthy the plants are, and get an idea of numbers. And some of these sites we spray with phosphite, which is a fungicide which helps enhance the survival of the community and these species. So yeah, we'll be checking out a number of populations.
And we're going up there.
And we are going behind that ridge into a gully. Into a gully.
What's it called?
Andersonia echinocephala. So I suppose spiny head.
What's its range?
Well, it's only in the Stirlings, but this is one of the ones I mentioned. It's got one tiny population, 200 kilometres from here, in the mid barren area of the Fitzgerald, but nothing in between.
Really?
So
why? How?
Because we have to assume under a very wetter, different climate, they occurred.
And of course, with the clearing of the land, there would have been other populations obviously stretching across, right?
Well, there would have, but there's also a lot of bush in between.
Yeah.
And it's not there anymore. It's only in these mountain environments.
So this is really quite old, isn't it? This is...
You'd imagine it would be, but
Wow.
I'm not going to hazard guess on any ages of anything, because really you have to do genetic work. But there's been no genetic work done on any of these to compare.
Oh no.
But they're hopefully going to do one species from here that is the same, and it grows with this in the Fitzgerald River National Park, a Devesia in the pea family. So it's pretty interesting.
It is incredible. Pollinated by insects? Is it?
Yes, it would be.
Yes. Obviously the kind of insect.
Well, we've had one entomologist do work in here, a girl called Melinda Moore, and she's done an amazing amount of... And she's documented some pollinators, but we've seen click beetles on another Andersonia, its relative, and so there's another Andersonia quite similar but much more upright, and it only grows on the top. So Dylan will be bumping into that, and then this one it occurs on the top, but also in the slopes as well. And both of them are very susceptible to dieback. So, this should be not a sea of it, it should be common through here, but it's likely got one or two. Hopefully when we go into the patch we'll see more. Banksia anatona, the cactus banksia, which is critically endangered and only occurs in the Stirling Ranges National Park.
So it would have been down there where we've just looked.
It would always have been restricted. It certainly would have been probably all through this gully once upon a time, but now it's confined to a small, like a hectare pocket.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Not just here though, other locations?
We have others. We're going to go a second pocket, and then there is also one big population sort of just a couple of kilometres east of here in a sort of a big valley area. But we've only really have three good populations left. And where we're here on the edge of the population, you can see it's highly affected by dieback. It's very open, some plants persisting, but if you turn around and then you look how thick it is there's quite a few highly susceptible species that are persisting here, and it's a totally different structure, even though this is the same plant community. And we have been spraying this with phosphite for the last 15 years or so, which is a fungicide which helps boost the plant's defence responses to Phytophthora dieback. And it has been fairly effective at maintaining this population. However, it's extremely difficult to spray this, and the pilot is quite nervous, so he only does it from a height. So we're not sure how much chemical actually gets onto it. We're in such a steep terrain.
So this is from dieback.
Oh, so we've this is a seed, fruit or follicle of Banksia anatona, and there's typically 2 seeds inside there, and we have collected seed from this population before, and it's stored at the Threatened Flora Seed Centre up in Perth, at Department of Parks, Biodiversity Conservation and Attractions. And we have planted out a population of Banksia anatona into a seed orchard south of the Stirlings, and one of those is sort of in the Warriup Hill area, and it's done very well. We've been able to collect seed from that population also. So we do have, even though these are highly threatened in the wild, we have some fallback in that we have a good seed collection in Perth. We're probably duplicates sent to Kew Gardens, the Millennium Seed Bank, and we also have a translocation. And so we've walked up out of the Banksia anatona, and now we're looking at a very similar Banksia, which is endemic also, Banksia hirta, but it is a much more widespread species. And
Just looking at it, I would have said it was
the same.
yeah.
Yes, it looks very similar, but we just so much speciation in the southwest. There are lots of subtle differences.
Is there any idea with, obviously these two are so closely related, is one ancestral to another? Is that information known?
There would be a phylogenetic tree, and you would be able to see how closely related they are, and they probably are relatively closely related, but I can't tell you off the top of my head. Yes, we can look at that. And then we're walking up this slope, which is all sedimentary rocks. We've got sort of sandstone and metamorphosed sandstone, and then you can see the quartz veins. And then in
There's a lot of quartz running through it.
Yes. So the rock was all formed, the sandstone, under an inland sea, and then uplifted to form the mountains, and then with various layers. You've got sandstone, you've got bilite and shale and quartzite, and then where it's folded you've got schist. So a lot of the species in the southwest appear to have been here a long time and have evolved in situ, so they don't have great powers of dispersal, so they've all found their little habitats and niches and soil types.
And yet this is so different. This is so
yes,
different to this.
They've all evolved their own strategies for survival, even though they're very, very different.
Same kind of... Wow.
Did you want to look at the Darwinia again?
Yes.
Yes, so this is one of the Darwinias, the Darwinia laostyla. The genus Darwinia was named after the grandfather of Charles Darwin, Erasmus Darwin. And in the Stirling Range we have what we call the mountain bells. There's about 9 species of bells, and they each have their own particular geographic location in the park. So they've evolved or had specialised in their own little microhabitats. Some are in the high eastern mountains, some in the low western mountains, some in the centre. So they're quite unique, and probably, we think, bird pollinated. Ran out of words. Yes. Over here, it's got a bit more of a ripple.
What's this from?
Oh, watch that nest, sorry.
Oh, yes.
This isn't the best place to see the ripples, but in some places you've got these beautiful ripples which were formed under the ocean, the sand ripples. Not as good here as other bits. These are ripples here. I mean,
Found some?
they're pretty good. They're not perfect, but they are. I think you get the gist with them.
Wow.
So that rock shows the ripples, and the rock was laid down under an inland sea.
And we're talking about billions of years ago. Well, 1 point.
Well, I think the rare one, but it's an endemic to the Stirlings, Lambertia ericifolia. You can see the orange flowers in the distance. So it's got lots and lots of nectar, and there's always lots of honey eaters and other nectarous birds feeding on it. But also highly susceptible to ibex. Yellow pea is also rare. It's a pea called Latrobia coliforma. And it's growing here. With our other species that we're looking for is Lambertia Barrett. Unfortunately, this is the dead one.
Did you say this was the rare one, this one here?
No. The yellow pea is rare.
Oh, okay.
And then this is a Lambertia Farrellii, Farrell's Lambertia. Now
Dead
it
from
is dead. It could be dieback, but we are getting a lot of limb dieback and possibly drought deaths as well. So we'll just have to go in and see. It's surrounded by a healthy plant. It's surrounded by banksia, so in theory you would say it isn't dieback because there's so many other healthy species around it. But here is one healthy one right next to it, which I didn't even see, but it's not flowering. And hopefully we'll see a couple in flower because it's got a very pretty flower. Dead one. That's good. There's a couple of live ones. I'm going to be just GPSing these. So, there, that's one of the mountain banksias, Banksia solandri, and another endemic to the Stirlings and grows on the mountain tops and mountain slopes. Another species that's very susceptible to Phytophthora dieback. And then right next to it, there's a very special patch, we have a Divisia obovata, named after the obovate leaves, large fleshy green leaves. And this is one of the species I was talking about, like the Andersonia echinocephala we mentioned. This grows in the Stirlings, but then it's got this crazy outlying population in the Barren Ranges in the Pistoia River National Park, 150 kilometres plus away from here.
Wow.
So again, once upon a time, one assumes they were connected, and they have drawn to these moisture refugia. It's got interesting fruits and bracts. Pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How do they operate?
So when it dries out, the pod, it'll dehiss and open up and apart from the calyx. And we have got seed collections of this as well. Because these plants, they're not, obviously we have to walk quite a ways to get to them. Sometimes we'll come and we'll put bags on them. And when the seed ripens, it'll release into the bags, and then we come back and we collect the bags. So I'm going to note the waypoint of this because we really don't have many of these. We don't have very good stands of them left. And actually, I think in the background that's a western whipbird, which is a fairly special bird in the Australia.
What's the western whipbird do?
Makes that squeaky sound.
Yeah.
That's about as much as I know.
It's not a pollinator?
I think they're a bit more omnivorous. I'm not a bird specialist. So yeah, it's a pretty special little patch, and we've been spraying with phosphide again for quite a few years, since probably about 1998 or so, and it's hanging on in. It's only a tiny patch, but it's still here. I wonder, we had an easier way there. We might go around it. This is another species of Davesia. It's not different from the rare one we just looked at, but it's spectacular because of these amazing bracts that form around the flowers. You see the flower inside there.
Wow.
Trying to think of the common name. I think it's called like the rattlebeak flower or rattle something. And then the fruits will also, seed pods will form in there. But they're just spectacular, the bracts. And yes, two similar species growing so close to each other is really bizarre too.
We're about to enter an area of dieback coming through this healthy patch. Ah, here.
Yeah, so as soon as you walk out of there,
Yeah. Wow.
We've had that beautiful thick patch with lots of rare and endemic species, and you walk out and all opens up, and this has been long infested by Phytophthora and Murmai.
So it's really saturated into the soil, is it?
Oh, not so much. Well, it will be in the soil, but it's gone through, and not many of the susceptible species are surviving. In this one little patch, we have 3 species of Lambertia. They're in the Proteaceae family. They're a genus of only, 12 or so species. I haven't got the figure on the top of my head. But here we've got Lambertia uniflora. None of them are flowering, unfortunately, except for the Ericifolia. This is relatively widespread, Stirling's and Albany area. But then behind it, with the orange flowers, is Lambertia ericifolia, which is endemic to the Stirlings. And then the third species, which we just have to find one, is our critically endangered Lambertia. Oh, well, we have a dead one.
A dead critically...
And then we'll find a live one, hopefully just near it.
What is this critically endangered?
So it's critically endangered. It's highly susceptible to dieback, and we're right on the edge of the dieback front here. We've already had a population extinction of this Lambertia. Another one's about to go extinct, and we really have only 3 reasonable populations left. So it's another species at high risk of extinction.
And there's funding for this?
Well, yes, you know, over the years we've had funding to collect seed and to spray with phosphite again, and we have done some translocations. We haven't had a lot of success with translocations so far. It's been hard to propagate and hard to maintain, and in the wild, some of these deaths appear to be due to either drought or possibly another fungal disease. We're not entirely sure. We have a live one here behind us. It's a lovely yellow flower that I think we're only seeing sort of flower buds coming on. We don't have any flowers. It does also flower in autumn, but sometimes you get a few flowers in spring. Looks much prettier when it's a flower. So
And there's a flower of one that you were saying is endemic to the Stirlings.
this one here, yes, we can get a close-up of this. Yeah, and if you brush it, you can see how sticky it is. It's covered in nectar, so the birds go mad for it. But also honey possums. So that other, the Banksia turner we looked at before, we put out cameras, and we've seen honey possums pollinating it.
Wow.
as well as western spinebills and honey eaters. But it's a very important food source, and when you lose these due to dieback, you lose a huge habitat source, a huge food source. So we have a lump of quartzite, and then we have the big capping of a vein of quartz that's run through it, and it's sheared off.
How does that form?
Well, I suppose metamorphosed sandstone, and it would have been subject to shearing and buckling and heating.
Amazing. And then this is not the native bee, obviously.
No. It is the feral bee, the honeybee, and that's Eucalyptus marginata, which grows up the mountains, but in a much shrubbier mallee form of jarrah.
And has it changed in its growth patterns with the introduction of the European bee?
Oh, not that we know of, but
I mean, in its dispersal and things like that. I mean, it's doing well out of it, obviously.
Yes, it obviously well pollinated. But I don't know. I think that we know there's been any changes in its ecology as a result of the honeybee.
And how's it going today?
How's it what?
How's it going today?
I think the jarrah will persist quite well. It resprouts after fire, so it's not killed outright by fire. So it's very resilient to fire. It's reasonably resilient even to dieback in this situation, and it'll probably persist quite well up here.
And why is that? What is it about some of these plants that make it more resistant to dieback to other plants?
It's to do with their metabolism, their immune responses, and probably the structure of the roots even. Just some species are able to sort of seal off the lesion and survive, as others succumb very quickly. So this area here has been quite badly affected by Phytophthora dieback. It's an Andersonia kind of capilla here that's surviving, but next to it and around it, a lot of the plants have died, and that'll be due to disease. And everything's a lot more open here. You know, there's a lot more bare ground, and the rock's much more visible than in the healthy veg. And you know, vegetation's much lower. You've lost all that tall shrub layer.
What do we see behind us?
Well, in the distance there we see Bluff Knoll, which is the highest mountain in the southwest, and obviously the highest of the Stirling Range. And we're only about 500 metres or so here, but that reaches about 1,100 metres. And there is quite a unique plant community on those higher mountains in the eastern Stirling. It's called the Eastern Stirling Range Montane Heath and Thicket Community. That's an EPPC listed community, and it's critically endangered. Again, due to Phytophthora dieback, fires had an impact, and also there's been significant grazing of native species, interestingly enough, by the native quokka, which targets a lot of the rare species and stops them growing, flowering and fruiting, and in some cases they actually die. So it's got lots of issues, but it's also got lots of wonderful plants, and a number of plants that only occur in that community. And one of these is Banksia montana. That's the rarest species in this area. We've only got 37 mature plants surviving of the mountain Banksia montana.
In the whole species?
Yep, that's
37
mature plants. A few young ones, but only 37 mature plants. But again, we have grown some outside the Stirlings in seed orchards, and we have collected quite a bit of seed. And interestingly, as I just mentioned quokka, I realised we're sitting amongst quokka scats, cockapoo, and they're people often think they only occur on Rottnest Island, but there are a lot of quokkas in the Stirling Range and areas on the south coast. And we have my colleague called Damien Rathbone has analysed the scats in the quokka up on Bluff Knoll, and he's been able to detect foliage of the rare species within the scats, so that's how we know they're targeting some of the rare species, and we've also taken photos of them using remote sensing infrared cameras. We've caught quokka in the act of grazing some of the rare plants, so it's an interesting story.
I wonder what's so interesting about my shoe.
Is that
all the yellow around its head, is it?
Yeah, there's a lot of yellow. That's one humongous fly if it's a fly.
Fly, yeah, I've
isn't
never
it?
seen a fly that big.
Yeah.
I don't know that this native fly is that big.
That's looks flyish to me.
Oh. Well, we'll ask Dylan. He knows a little bit about invertebrates.
Does he? Yeah.
We'll be able to show him the photos.
Yeah.
Well, he did his honours on invertebrates.
It's probably near death, I'd say. Just, what is this? Like, how can I be doing that?
Keeps sticking its thing into my boot. Like I'm in bed.
What is it, getting some moisture or something there?
Proboscis.
Proboscis, yeah. It's doing something.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so we've got a little patch of Banksia brownii here, the feather-leaved Banksia, another critically endangered species. It was very common on this mountain, success, you know, about 20 years ago. There were lots and lots of it, but now there's only small pockets left. So I think this is a new little pocket we found today. You can see that one on the right that has died due to dieback, but the others are looking very, very healthy. And underneath it we have the mountain bell again, Towinilea styla. And yeah, then we'll be looking at the Banksia anatona shortly too, the population just next to it, and this is all within a phosphite target area. So they have done genetic work on the feather-leaved Banksia, and so our populations in Albany and on the coast, and they've found that the Stirling Range populations are quite distinct genetically from populations on the coast, and also a third population on the Torndale Peninsula. So obviously been isolated and differentiated over time. And the feather-leaved Banksia also has a unique invertebrate that only occurs on it. It's in the hemipterans. It's called Triosa. It's actually called Sarah Barrett after me, which is very, very special. And again, if you lose Banksia brownii, we're at risk of losing
You as well.
losing me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it is like, even in that one patch there, there's probably over 100, then another 100. I'd say there could be close to 300, and then I'd say there's about 5% dead.
Recent, since
you can see the brown ones on the dieback front.
Yeah, yep, I can see them.
This camera's taking. Okay. This is another rare species that we haven't actually seen here before. It's the mountain paper heath, or Sphenotoma drumundii. And it typically is on the mountain tops or even on cliff faces. It can be really hard to get to. But here it's just occupying a big chunk of port side in the middle of the valley. And it can grow on these really, this really rocky habitat. Just gets its roots into the cracks. It's just more of a visual
isn't
thing.
that amazing?
It's amazing.
How did it happen?
So it's just
Thing and then just shattered.
it's just split, but look at all the lines.
Look, there's an impact thing here.
It's amazing. But it looks like a tree trunk with the bark around it almost, doesn't it?
I can't use any of that. None of it's true.
I can only make anecdotal observations.
So that's named after me, hey? Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I went over one about double that size accidentally. The sun was in my eyes and the head had to slam on the road.